All right. Good morning, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast. Today I have on a special guest, Mr. Andrew Russell. Andrew got his start with music at an early age. Andrew started making mixtapes by grabbing snips from the radio of the tunes he loved as a child and would then learn to play them on his first drum kit along with the tracks. As Andrew grew up, he started to learn other instruments and found that he could easily and quickly pick up the basics of most instruments he put his hands on. In his teenage years, Andrew watched as digital technology started to develop in the industry and became hooked on sampling, sequencing, and mixing beats and songs of his own. Behind a computer or a mixer felt more at home for him. Andrew soon found himself mixing FOH for some of the best cabaret singers on the NYC circuit while still in high school. The road from there took a few twists and turns, quite literally, but after some time, he found himself back behind a mixer doing what he truly loves, bringing quality sound music to the masses. Andrew now works as the lead music engineer at Zoetropolis Cinema Stillhouse in Lancaster, PA. Mr. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Corey. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, no problem. So you said you started by snipping stuff from the radio. Is that where your inspiration and your drive to do music came from?
Oh, man. I always loved music as a kid. It just touched me in a way that it's hard to explain. I always felt inspired and moved by music at a young age. Didn't know what was inspiring me or moving me, but I just knew music made me feel different and rang a note with me, so to say, that few other things did. I just enjoyed it so much. So when I was a kid, like that's what we had. We had radio and that's it. And I remember having this little red Sears made boombox, Sears brand boombox, and everything was analog, and we had the little cassette tapes, and if you heard a song that you wanted to hear again, that's how you had to get it. Like you recorded it onto a little cassette tape. Yep, straight from the radio. So we do that onto one tape, and then the fancy things were the boom boxes that had two tape decks. And I was like, okay, I can get it from the radio onto one tape. Now I have another tape over here, and I can get the songs that I like. Now I can arrange them in order.
Oh, so now you can make
it added a whole nother dynamic. Like it was a big deal to have a boombox that had two tape decks on it.
So you can make it like your own little album.
Exactly. Almost. Your own little quote playlist.
Playlist, yeah. That's
so it took a few more steps to get where you wanted to be versus,
When was that?
Oh, you're gonna make me age myself on the I
don't know how old.
Oh man, well I'll be 46 this year, so
that wasn't that long ago.
Okay, if you say so.
Comparatively, right?
Comparatively, yeah. I was a kid doing that stuff. I'd say early 80s, early mid 80s.
Because I grew up with my dad still had a car with the the mixtape or the 8. What is it called?
It definitely wasn't 8-track when you were a kid. No. Was it 8-track or cassette tape?
No, definitely cassette tape. Yep.
Cassette tape. Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't 8-track.
Well, I have seen an 8-track thing. I do remember those.
In a museum?
No. In like one of my school was really underfunded as a kid, so it was like one of their, instead of a CD player, they had like an 8-track system, and they had all their old tapes that they would play music from that way. But yeah, it was definitely one of the smaller cassette tapes that he had. And I grew to love those. That's what I didn't realize Chris Tomlin was this old, but that's when I first heard "Here I Am to Worship," one of my favorite songs of all time. And how I heard that doesn't matter. But anyway, but yeah, I do remember the old cassette tapes.
So I got going with on those. Yeah, and I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it would be such a profound thing like later in life to. And I didn't know that a lot of people wouldn't have the sense to do what I was doing, and that like some type of early form of putting together playlists and understanding the signal flow and understanding like how to chop things up, just using like play, pause, record, and like the most basic tools that you can imagine, and to make it sound okay.
That's wild to me that from like a little boombox that you would have to like you would receive the signal. First off, you would have to find the spot where the signal was clear,
Yeah.
and then you would have to. I don't know the process, but I guess it's just kind of like almost burning like a CD in some aspects, or is it literally just
Well, you'd have to pull it off the radio live and in real time.
Right.
There was no like zooming through things, and when you laid out, a recording, or took your samples or your clips of tracks and put them onto the next one, it was all real time. So
you had to be good?
you had to be good. Well, either that or have a lot of time.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
just to keep doing it, to get it right.
You had to call in a DJ. Hey, I want to hear this song at this time.
Either that or just listen.
Right.
The rotations weren't heavy like they are now.
Well, I can't imagine that they were. Besides, even today, you'll hear radio stations that play the same exact song over and over and over again.
Yeah,
So
within an hour. Yeah.
I'm sure that it was similar back then as well.
Not nearly as songs weren't in as heavy of rotation. You did hear a lot of the same songs frequently, but not as often as modern radio at all.
Really?
Yeah, no.
So
it was there. Hence,
hearing...
I was clipping them off the radio, so I could, could hear them and then get to know them better, and then start to learn them effectively. I got. Oh man, I bullied my parents into getting me a drum kit, like when I was real young, and somehow convinced them. Kind of moving into another segment here. Kind of convinced them that was a good idea, and I guarantee they regretted it like tremendously, like probably almost immediately.
I know some kids who have a drum set, and it's just, why did I give them a drum set? How old were you when you got your drum set?
Oh man, I don't know. Had to have been 10.
Well, at least I know some people who give like the 3-year-olds a drum set, and I'm like, why they don't even have the capacity or capability to like know what they're doing. At least a 10-year-old, they'll go crazy.
Yeah,
but they'll learn.
Yeah,
what to do.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. It's a very subjective thing. Some like 3-year-olds have it naturally built in. And some, for some people it's more of an acquired skill.
Was yours more acquired?
If somebody who's given their kid a drum set at 3 years old obviously comes from a music background.
Right, yes. That's also true.
That's something they've got built into the kid's DNA, hopefully. And, I would imagine would pick it up. So, to me, like, I didn't grow up in a super musical household. My parents had their vinyl, and they had their records that they liked, and it was pretty conservative, and, John Denver and Beach Boys and stuff like that. There was no, like, Led Zeppelin or Doors or stuff, or stuff that was considered, like, heavy metal to them. It wasn't around in the household. My brother did have some heavier stuff that kind of inspired me a little bit. But
so what was your reasoning for getting the drums out of all things?
Oh, geez. It just felt natural to me. It was something that's easy for me to pick up on, and I could sit there and tap. You can just sit there and tap.
Sit there and tap, yeah.
Tap along with anything, on anything, and it just spoke to me. It was something that felt natural and came kind of easy to me.
Is there anything you got like pretty decent at, or?
I mean, I think drums and percussion were the first thing. They were like my first love. It took me a while, like I said, I got that drum, talked my parents in to get the drum kit. I take those mixtapes that I was making, those clippets from the radio, and just play along with them, like put the headphones on and just beat the heck out of those drums, trying to play along with that and mimic. I didn't know anything about theory. I hadn't taken any lessons, nothing. And
no rudiments, no nothing.
No, nothing at that point. And just put the headphones on and started learning. And, anything I could get my hands on, really, anything that rang to me.
So, moving on from there, what grew your expert? Did you do drums in high school? Did you go to college for what?
I did. I played for a while on my own, and I got kind of okay with it. Then that was way too young for any real music program back then. Back then, the music program was like they gave you a recorder and
Where'd
like
you live?
you drove the teacher crazy. Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah, I
very
grew
much
up
middle of the nowhere.
Yeah, I grew up in nowhere, Wisconsin, like right on Lake Michigan, and it was beautiful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There just wasn't a lot going on.
Besides cheese.
Yeah, there was cheese. There was cheese everywhere and cows and the lake, but the lake was beautiful.
You know, cows love music.
They do.
Yeah. Have you ever played for cows?
Unbeknownst to me, yes.
Well.
So anyway, yeah, I did get involved in school.
Okay.
To public school on a very minimal level. I eventually ended up going to boarding school, and in boarding school, music and art was heavily encouraged.
Oh, really?
And that's where things really took off for me, like in terms of that stuff started ringing bells. Like, okay, this might be something. I might have something here. I might be able to do something with this later down the road.
That's so interesting. Usually boarding schools are kind of like strict.
Oh, it was strict. Don't get me wrong. Oh, it was super strict.
You want to give me a rundown in like a day of boarding school? I've heard things, but I've never been a part of, never seen one, never really talked to someone who's been to a boarding school.
So I grew up in Wisconsin. I came to Lancaster in the late 80s as an early teenager and got in trouble. Had some behavioral problems. And I went to boarding school 89, something like that, 90. And, it was super strict because, it was all kids that had behavioral problems, mental health problems, social problems. It was kind of a school for everybody to go to that, like, kind of didn't fit in anywhere else or got kicked out of everywhere else. I was asked to leave Hempfield High School.
Oh, wow.
And, and went there. And I was getting in trouble, and it was a good move for my mom to make. And I didn't like it at the time. But anyway, moving on from that, it was strict. We'd wake up. We had a set wake up time. You had a certain amount of time to shower, get dressed, clean your room, get to breakfast, like this. Like everything was very regimented.
And you lived there like full time.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like military boot camp just for kids in school.
Yeah, we used to call it the janitorial arts school.
Oh, really?
Because, you were made to clean everything and take care of everything very well. And,
well, that's probably a plus for you now.
No, my apartment's a mess. No, it's a disaster.
Fair enough. I remember in college they used to like make us do dorm duties, and it would just I hated it. I'm a germaphobe, like a severe germaphobe, so I would always like regret doing having to do dorm duties. But now that I live in like my own apartment with a really good friend, I'm okay with like doing the dishes. I'm okay with like cleaning the shower or whatever. It's been a really weird experience.
Yeah, I go in cycles with it. Like my apartment will be a mess for a few weeks, and then it gets cleaned up for a few weeks, and just like anything in life,
right?
It goes in cycles. So anyway, So you
got the boarding school and you started doing the music more.
Started doing the music more, found that things got a little bit freer for me in terms of time at the school, in terms of privileges, in terms of living situations. And like the arts programs were treated a little bit differently at that school anyway, than the regular programs. So I allowed me a little bit more freedom, which I really liked. And I got to do stuff that I really liked and work with some extraordinarily talented kids and adults. Our theater program director, I did theater, I did music, anything I could really. Our directors were people that had come like straight off Broadway.
Oh wow!
Really like talented people would come through that school and teach.
I'm slowly realizing that a lot of talent around here made their way from like New York or LA.
Oh, absolutely.
Most of the talent around here definitely has this is their retirement place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't like all the rules and everything, but I'm so happy about the opportunities that going to that school afforded me in terms of experience, in terms of meeting some of these cabaret singers and people that had worked on Broadway. Eventually, I would go on to, do some work off Broadway, and it was a tremendous experience as a kid.
Because that was probably your in from those experiences. Correct me if I'm wrong, but meeting those people from New York City, that's probably where you got your in.
Kind of. It kind of helped me it got me a taste for the city young, and a taste for the industry, and I knew a few people enough to say that I want to go to New York City. In terms of going to New York City and getting your feet in, getting a foot in the door there, I mean, obviously it's different for everybody as they go there. For me, it took a couple years.
Well, yeah, because in the 90s, the rap scene is exploding in New York City.
Oh, it was everywhere.
B.I.G. All those rappers that it's exploding out of Brooklyn and Queens.
Also, I took a turn at one point. I graduated from that school a little bit later on in '96. I actually ended up staying longer. You had to graduate not only academically, but the community had to agree that you were ready to move on to the next stage of your life. So there was not only an academic component to that school, there was
like
more a social and emotional component as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was certainly different. So anyway, I ended up leaving that school, almost 20,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was almost 20 years old. So it was 96. Yeah, I was 20. I just turned 20, like, right after I left. But anyway, so I left the school, and where I was going with that is kind of got out of actual, like, playing instruments, which is going to sound strange, and more in to the back end, like the production stuff. Even while at school, I had kind of gotten out of that. I had learned, and I mentioned this in the blurb, like I found myself more comfortable being behind the scenes. I like performing. I never thought I was particularly good at it, which is a whole nother topic that I want to come back to.
Sure.
I'd love to get into the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've talked about that at all.
I've definitely had that myself.
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody does. But, I performed in school, and I've done all kinds of things, and even after school performed quite a bit. But I just never had the comfort level that I did, like, behind the mixer and behind a computer and doing stuff digitally. And after graduating school, watching the move from everything go from, like, analog over to digital, and the DJs, the rise of the DJs and the house music scene. You mentioned hip hop, which kind of brought me on to thinking about, well, I got my first set of turntables and started DJing right around 96, 97. And, I got my first set of Technics 1200s, 2 turntables, a mixer, and started buying vinyl, and found a level of comfort there that was different for me. Because in high school, in a school with, an emphasis on the performing arts, so to say, man, I was surrounded by some really talented songwriters and musicians and stuff. And quite frankly, to me, in my head, I couldn't keep up with that. And I was like, oh, man, I got to start thinking of another way that this is going to work for me or to be involved in the scene. And I do okay, again, playing music, but if it felt more natural to let them do it, the guys that I felt were better playing.
Right.
And to find a way in which I could incorporate myself.
And support them.
And, be a part of the show without being in the show. Yeah.
You're not the show. You're just a part of it.
Yeah.
So how did you say you made your way up to New York City? How did you get your foot in? How was that process like? What was it like to work for the cabarets?
So in that boarding school, what we did is the summer programs, we did a dinner theater type deal. Not type deal, it was a dinner theater during the week, and we'd perform like Sondheim, Gershwin, all that fun stuff, and
nice.
serve dinner, a bunch of kids running around dressed up, and we had a certain a clientele that loved that. And then on the weekends, the director would bring in cabaret singers from New York City. And they'd come in, and we'd do these specials every weekend. So during the week, it was dinner theater, and the weekend, it was cabaret. And, some of the top guys and gals at the time in the New York City circuit were coming out to this little school in Massachusetts and performing.
Oh, in
and
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they
That's
would
where you're
come
at
out
this
to
point.
us. And, that's where the boarding school was. And,
Oh, I thought you meant
yeah.
the boarding school was in Lancaster.
No.
Oh.
Yeah,
I was
they
mistaken.
really sent me away.
You're like, I can't be bothered with him anymore.
Yeah, he's got to go. No, they were very sweet and kind about it. No, I needed help. I needed to go there. So, so the performers would come out, and I started by my first few seasons of that stuff, like not performing. I did behind the scenes, like was doing dishes and for the dinner theater and for the cabaret, and then it got to a point where I said, okay, I want to do this, and like I was singing and doing the whole 9 yards, and then I was like, well, I think I like the tech part of this a lot, and I was like watching somebody run an old Allen and Heath, analog mixing console, and quickly, like, it just made sense to me. Like, I could look at what he was doing, and the guy doing the stuff was gracious enough to, give me a crash course, this does this and this does that, and I was learning about accents and grouping and panoramic EQs and stuff. This way before, digital anything. It just made sense. And I, next thing I know, a season or two later, I was, mixing those. Yeah. And just doing the thing. And then, I graduated, kind of went down a wormhole of a couple different things. Like I said, the turntable stuff, the DJing stuff, moved around a bit, kind of took a little time off before ending up in New York City, a couple years anyway. And I want to say I went up there to the New York City area around 99 to go to college for mechanical engineering. I also had a love for cars and motorcycles and, all kinds of things to, get hurt doing.
Right. But very profitable, though.
It can be.
Oh, yeah, right.
It can be, just like with anything. It kind of depends why you're in it.
That's fair.
I've always been a chaser of passion, not of money.
Fair enough.
So, but yeah, anyway, getting up there and like getting my foot in the door, so to say, I had some friends from the school that lived in New York City.
Okay.
So they were gracious and, opened their doors to me and introduced me to some of that culture. New York City mostly for me was DJ culture and clubs and that kind of scene. So they, kind of pointed me in the right direction. And from there, it was like you kind of hit the ground and you just go. In a big city like that, it becomes all about who you know.
Right.
Networking, being able to get yourself out there, whether it be as an artist, as an engineer, whatever.
What was your way of doing that, of getting out there, putting your name out there? Because without social media, at least in those days.
Yeah, you showed up. You
just showed up and did it.
You just showed up and were out at every gig that you could get out to, every event that was going on. If you saw a group of people that were doing something that you wanted to be a part of, just start showing your face there. Start showing your face, get to know people. Hopefully, one or two people that's showing up at this event, and you just networked. And for me, that didn't come naturally. It took a little bit of effort.
You consider yourself an introvert?
To a point, yeah.
Okay.
To a point. I mean, I think I'm a balance of both.
Gotcha.
Extroverted introvert. I'm perfectly comfortable being alone at my apartment with my cats, or I kind of flourish in the social setting too if I'm there.
Right.
If I manage to make it there and like I do okay. So that's the wonderful thing about the engineering stuff for me now too, is it scratches that social itch for me. So, I'm at work, I'm getting paid to do something that I really love to do. And I get that little bit of social interaction. Actually, it's a lot.
Yeah, right.
That's Zoetropolis. And then I can go back home and like be okay with it. So at first it was a challenge, and I found ways to make myself more comfortable doing it. A big part of the scene up in New York specifically is, and when you're at the age when you're going out to clubs, you start drinking.
Right.
And alcohol plays a huge role. And other substance as well, and it's just became part of it and makes you a little more relaxed and a little more sociable.
Right.
Maybe not as good at your job or as good at what you're trying to do,
but good at networking.
Good at networking to a point. Yeah.
So, what are some of the crazy clubs you've worked for or been a part of, and at least, or did you ever get the chance to work for a club in New York City?
I did, yeah. I worked at a bunch of different venues there. One of the most notable still open would be I've done some work at Webster Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a big one. I'd help a buddy out at Crowbar, New York City, which was a big club up there. I believe they still have venues open in Chicago and Miami. I worked for a little underground club called Sullivan Room, which was absolutely phenomenal. They would host, the brightest and best talents I would thought at the time in house music and techno music. Some of the guys that had like scored like the first Fast and Furious movie. Like,
oh really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
People, Josh Wink, who is a Philly native, very prominent DJ still in the scene today, and an innovator. Back in the day in the 90s, he's got to work with him. Man, all kinds of just brilliantly talented people from all over the world.
Right. If you're going to be anywhere, at least in the DJing scene, it's probably New York City in the 90s, thousands.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all heard of like the Limelight. I mean, a lot of people have, and there's just so much going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you said before the show you had talked about working with WWE.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you get there?
So I had kind of moved out of the city at that point, and I was just kind of hanging out, and I was doing the car thing. I mentioned that I liked mechanics, and I was doing the car thing, and I had this gig, like, kind of working on and building race cars, and wasn't happy. I wasn't happy doing that for money. I had taken kind of like another passion of mine and turned it into a job.
Gotcha.
Which is a tricky thing to do with music as well. When you take your passion and turn it into work, and support your living doing it, it's another animal. But anyway, I was unhappy doing that, and I had met somebody who's running a small company, doing audio stuff, and the company was going through pretty massive development, and he brought me on board. We just knew each other from a few brief conversations. Hey, do you want to go on tour in the Northeast? Sure. Yeah. What do you got for me? You're going to be touring with WWE Wrestling, like Nitro and stuff like that. Yeah, and this was 2009, I want to say, 2010.
So like just after like maybe the golden age of WWE.
Yeah, it was like Kurt Angle.
Yeah,
right. Like I was hanging out with him. Like
that's wild.
Like I'd leave front of house for a second, like come back to where I was sitting mixing front of house, and like Kurt Angle's like sitting in my seat. And I'm like, dude, you got to move.
So he's like, tell me again.
Kurt Angle's like, I'm sorry. Like gets moves from behind the mixer.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, man.
So what is out of all of these experiences, do you have like a funny moment, or I'm sure there's plenty, but a moment that had gone wrong, or stupid stuff just happened?
So many things going wrong, so many things going right. I don't. It's hard to say, man.
Is there anyone that just pops in your mind right now you want to tell us?
I did a VH1 Behind the Music. I don't know if you ever saw that. You might be too young for that. So VH1 would go around and they'd go to public schools in New York City and I guess other venues or other cities as well. And they were trying to educate kids about music and, show them a little bit about it and bring like artists to them. So they could see what the music industry was about.
Kind of like AMP almost.
I don't know what AMP is.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
Oh, never mind. Keep going.
But anyway, so I was working at a public school in New York City, and the artist was the Jonas Brothers, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this was like after their first initial like peak stardom or whatever, and they kind of fell off the scene for a little bit. And
but still, that's.
Yeah, it was still a pretty big name. The bigger name at the show was SpongeBob.
Really?
SpongeBob was there. And
that's Like the musical, or
No, just like SpongeBob, man.
just legit SpongeBob?
So, I guess I'm allowed to talk. I don't know. SpongeBob was super secretive and like had the SpongeBob costume had its own security. So turns out, because of the branding, because of how big of a thing like SpongeBob is, at the time anyway, I'll speak to how things were when I worked with that crew. There was only one person that could portray SpongeBob. There was only one costume, hence it had its own security. And the person who was playing SpongeBob was this, little woman, and you couldn't take the chance of messing up the brand.
Right, yeah,
You know, it's that important, worth that much money. You hire the wrong person to come out and do SpongeBob or whatever, and they do one thing that's offbeat or, not right, you could lose potentially millions and millions of dollars on the line. So it was funny to me that like I'm at that gig and like I'm doing the thing and I'm thinking the Jonas Brothers are the big deal there, and turns out like SpongeBob was the big, I see these big security guys like coming in the venue with like a big black case, and I'm like, what on earth is in that case? And it was the SpongeBob costume.
Suit.
It was the SpongeBob suit.
That's
Had more security than the Jonas Brothers.
That is so funny.
It blew my mind.
That's wild.
Yeah. So things like that, like, I don't know, you think you know something about something and you show up and you never know.
Right. So, how did you make your way back to Lancaster City?
So, I've been up in New York City or in the immediate area from, I want to say 99 to about 2010, 2011. I went through a pretty messy divorce at the time of somebody that I'd been together with for about a decade. And I just couldn't find my groove. And I needed a change of scene. And I was running into some other problems as well. I had substance abuse problems and alcoholism going on, and going through something really difficult like that kind of fueled that stuff. And this was actually like right around the time of the Jonas Brothers stuff and everything too. I wasn't in good shape like when all that stuff was going on, and it felt right. I have family here, and I had spent a few years here. Like I said, I went to Hempfield, got in trouble, and left. And years later, it just seemed like a good place to come back and like gather myself and like take a deep breath and figure out where I wanted to go from here. Because at that point, I was in my 30s. Do I really want to keep doing this New York City hustle? I mean, it's a lifestyle up there.
Oh, for sure.
It is fast paced. It is
it's almost unmanageable.
It's absolutely unmanageable if you don't approach it the right way.
Right.
And I was not approaching it the right way at the time. So, I needed the break. And I needed something different. And so I just came back here and I said, let me figure out what I want to do. And I didn't know. I didn't come back out here to pursue any particular career. It was more to pursue a little self-knowledge, a little self-awareness. What direction do I want to go? Like, just start to figure things out.
Right.
And I had family here, so.
That must have been nice.
Yeah. So I came back to a very supportive family and kind of started to pick up the pieces and like, okay, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go from here? And I ended up, coming back here and dabbling in music a little bit. Fell back on my mechanical skills and was working. I had worked for Jaguar through the years and BMW and with motorcycles and with cars, and it seems to be like an ability that a lot of audio engineers or system engineers like have to go back and forth between like mechanical stuff. Like a lot of people that are like nerdy mechanics also have a hobby of either computers or audio or something along those lines. It's seems to me like the thought process of, troubleshooting of signal flow
It's very
and everything.
logical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is something that we share across those industries and probably some others too. But I've met a lot of audio engineers that have motorcycles, have hot rods, and vice versa. So I was in that for a while, and doing the car stuff, doing the motorcycle stuff, and then just started slowly jumping back into the audio stuff. Did it more leisurely, so to say. Like, did it for fun. Did the DJing stuff, and just didn't take it seriously. Just kind of did it for fun. Did radio stuff. Well, not radio, internet. Stuff, and just kept playing with it. And started to slowly get gigs in Lancaster, meet people, do some networking out here, and I'd eventually work for Matt Hostetter at a gig. Geez, he's one of the owners at Zoetropolis now, and he coordinates all the live events. So I did a gig for him, and no idea who he was or that he would end up owning, be a part owner or partner in Zoetropolis. And, we just stayed connected through the years. And when Zoetropolis opened, he had asked me to engineer the opening weekend of it. And next thing I knew, I was kind of like back into the music thing pretty heavily. And Zoetropolis, for me, has been, it wasn't always full time. Like, I started there, like, engineering a show here and there, and eventually, it's only last year, like, a little kind of post-pandemic stuff that they decided, I'd been advocating for a while for them to get an engineer in there that's, so you have the same engineer every weekend at your venue.
Right. Yeah.
Versus having touring engineers or different local engineers come in every weekend. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's different setups, different everything.
Different
every
setups.
single
Well,
time.
also, they have a house engineer there that knows the sound system, knows its strengths, knows its weaknesses, knows where everything's plugged in, knows where the breakers are.
Right.
Like, and I think after struggling a little bit, we need someone. And Andrew, what do you think about coming in? And I was, elated. Like, it's a dream come true.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So
Took a long time. That's a very short
sure.
version of a long
Right.
story. But
well, yeah, we just kind of condensed your entire life into like 40 minutes. So yeah.
Well, it's a radio.
Right. So what over all of your experiences, what are some of the things that you constantly notice that musicians make mistakes in?
Oh man. Thinking something that you don't, or like having a closed mind, or having set thinking and not being open to try something different. Sometimes it's easy to have like a narrow viewpoint, like tunnel vision, so to say, thinking that something's going to work. This has worked in the past.
I've always done it this way.
What's that?
I've always done it this way.
This is the formula. This is going to work no matter what.
Right.
I don't think that's the case in many aspects of life. And I understand that thinking too. I fall into that at times
sometimes
as well. It works sometimes. Yeah, you can come up with a formula. It'll work for a little while. And some people have gotten extremely lucky, and they've come up with a formula early on that has worked for the test of time. But that's a lot rarer. I think one of the biggest mistakes is thinking that there's a universal formula to everything. Keep an open mind. Listen to the house engineer.
Unpopular opinion number one.
Because they might know something that you don't, or they're speaking from their experience. Work with the team. I have some touring musicians and some people that come in general, like I'd say 90%, 95%, maybe even higher than that. The artists that I work with now that come through are super open, and they listen to me and whatnot. In some bigger forums, they're not. They come in, they want to boss around the help. And that doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work for anybody.
No, it's unhelpful, because overall it just creates this atmosphere of of hate and like distrust almost, and then the performances you can always tell when a performance is off.
Yeah, you can also always tell like when the touring team or the engineers or whoever's on, crew hands on site are beat up
Mm-hmm.
and are not treated well. And
Mm-hmm.
it emulates from top to bottom on
Right.
just about any production. There's people that'll uh, speak to this like all through all industry, whether it be manufacturing to entertainment to TV, radio, everywhere. Like if you treat everybody well and with respect, like things just are better.
Are better,
The
yeah.
the end product, specifically like with art
Mm-hmm.
stuff and music, I've found in my experience, like a happier team from top to bottom yields the best results.
Yes. So, what are some things that you would suggest to up and coming acts that want to figure out what their style is and all that jazz? Like, what are some tips and tricks? Because I know on amps you can do so many things with different amps and different pedals. And do you suggest experimenting with those? Do you suggest how do you suggest finding your sound?
It's a lot trickier nowadays because you have so much stuff at your fingertips. Like I didn't when I was a
Mm-hmm.
kid. Now you have digital consoles that have everything built into them, all sorts of different effects and DSPs. You want, a gate, reverb, compression, or whatever. The world, I like literally, there's more millions and millions of combinations at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that. I had to think about what I wanted to do and buy outboard gear and add on this huge chunk of gear to try to get a sound that I thought would work. And I guess my point, what I'm trying to get at is like experiment with the tools that you have at your disposal to the best of your ability. Nowadays, that rings a little bit different, I guess, is my point, because there's so many tools
Mm-hmm.
right at your fingertips. Nowadays, I tend to lean towards keeping these more simple. Less is more to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in terms of advice, like find your sound, find a sound formula that works for you, or a position that works for you in the industry that you think you can settle into and be comfortable and have some longevity, and you'll be happy doing
And
more than anything.
don't worry about copying other people.
No, not at all.
That's not what it's about at all.
No.
And
Well, you also got to decide like what you're going after.
oh, for sure.
Because I hear like one of the things I used to hear growing up a lot too. I want to be a famous musician. Interesting,
Right.
because being famous and being a musician is two
Two different
completely
things.
different things.
Yep.
And famous musicians
Rare.
that people refer to as a famous musician when they're talking about this A-list name. I'm not going to rattle any off, but they're not good musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the people that you hear on the radio. I have way better musicians come through Zoetropolis on a weekly basis
Right.
than most people I hear on the radio.
Yeah, it's wild. The only reason that they're quote unquote famous is because they knew people, and
Yeah.
and they are either started at an early age. Some of the people, don't get me wrong, they do have good talent. They're able to sing very, very well. However, a lot of the times what they're singing is something that was written specifically to be popular,
Exactly.
and that sells all good and well. But what the core of music, and we kind of talk about this on a few podcasts on how it's being like corporatized. It's being
Oh, it's been there
oh,
for
it's
a
been
long
there
time.
for a long time. That's what it is. It's the cookie cutter machine that says I love
Yeah.
you in a million different ways.
Since the beginning of commercial radio, back 40s, 50s, 60s, like it's been happening since then. And we're actually, what's great is we're in an age where that's
When it's
finally
slowly
starting to go
stop,
away
Yep.
because of the digital platform now,
Mhm.
and record companies are out of the picture for a lot of.
Yeah, it's. But if you want to find like really, really good talent, you got to look locally, especially if you want to hear new things.
Yes.
You're not going to hear unless you're in the Snarky Puppy. You're not going to hear good things or new things on the radio.
If you're willing to go down the wormhole on the internet and look around, and that was a big thing. Like DJing is like finding the music that nobody else had, and it used to be a lot easier because we didn't have the digital platform. But find a record label that you like. Find out who's on that record label, what other people they've worked with. Like, you got to look.
Yeah, I saw that. That was one interesting thing that that was mentioned before. That on CDs that they would have like people that was similar.
That was like my guidebook.
Yeah,
I'd look on some CD covers from my favorite artists, like as a teenager, and like who produced this, who is working on this, what studios it recorded at, and then I'd be able to like look through. We had magazines was our internet back then. I subscribed to a couple audio magazines, and I'd find out what gear they were working on. This that. It was a whole different thing. But you can go down that wormhole a lot easier now. Hop online, figure out who produced the album, who worked on it, who wrote the songs. And what equipment they used, and seek it,
Yeah, it's all about what you when I say don't copy someone, what I mean is like you don't want to do everything exactly the same, but you can emulate people and like kind of aim for that sound.
Absolutely,
if that's what you want.
Yeah, it's like this with many things in life. There's a lot of different ways to get the same result or a similar result.
But just mainly do what you want to do. If that's what you're going for, just do what you want to do.
Do what you again. Find your feet, find where you're comfortable, and do it.
So we had kind of talked about imposter syndrome a little bit earlier. You want to get into that now?
Oh man, I wish I had heard that term 20 years before I actually did. And nowadays, like mental health and all sorts of health things and like psychological things and therapeutic things are talked about a lot more, very publicly. Than they were when I was a kid. It just wasn't a thing. So I didn't hear that term till much later in my career or life. I'm not in late life, but anyway, that term kind of like rang true to me immediately as soon as I heard it. So imposter syndrome, if anybody's listening and like doesn't quite understand what that is, it's like the feeling of you don't deserve to be where you are. I don't belong here. Like I'm on a gig doing the thing or getting some accolades or awards, and it's like, I don't belong here. How did I end up here? I shouldn't be here. If they find out that I don't know this as well as they think I know this, they're going to fire me on the spot, So
it's walking into a room with like A-list musicians and then realizing, I can't do this.
Yeah. Well, thinking
you can't do. Yeah, right.
I can't do this. But the fact of the matter is, you're standing in that room with A-list musicians for a reason, because you can do it.
Yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
You wouldn't have been invited.
So I go through that even to this day, like at Zoetropolis sometimes, man. We have some extremely good artists come through there, and I'll be like, oh God, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be mixing this show?
Yeah, I'm mixing for them.
Yeah, and man, it's something that chased me around in all sorts of different fields, and it's applicable across the board to any walk of life. It's I wish I knew about it sooner, and could have kind of dealt with it and understood that I was put into these situations that were somewhat surreal in the automotive industry and the DJ industry, music, the engineering, all sorts of stuff that I found myself in this situation for a reason, and that I did belong there. Instead of beating myself up, like coming up with all these insecurities and letting those come to the forefront and fuel this anxiety and self-sabotage behavior.
So how did you deal with that? Was that I'm sure it's been a long process.
A lot of it's, therapy and talking to people and just having little like self-realizations, peer support. It's taken a while. And again, I still have spells of it, from time to time. I don't think it's anything that you completely get over. You just got to kind of pinch yourself. Like I still hear celebrities talk about it, having imposter syndrome. I forget, I was watching interview. I think it was on David Letterman interviewing someone, and they were talking about imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, I gotta talk to Corey about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome it's so weird because my story with imposter syndrome is that I came to LBC and a lot of the people here, like some of one of the vocal professor here, Dr. Bigley, compared the MWPA, the worship arts performing whatever the music program here. He said that the caliber of musicians here rivaled that of Peabody Institute.
Oh wow.
Yeah, well, because a lot of these people go and work at Sight and Sound. Like,
Yeah.
I have so many friends that are literally in Sight and Sound. I have so many friends that are literally at the Fulton Theater right now doing their shows and everything like that. And some of them are still in college, by the way, or not even in college yet. So I come to school and I see this. One of the main people that really put this out for me was a guy named Zach Fernback. Not only did he look good, he also was an incredible dancer. He could do ballet. He was an incredible singer. He was like the leads of most things, and then he could what is the three thread? He could act as well. He was a really good actor.
Oh man, I can't stand those people.
Oh, because they are like the peak of the musical theater community, and it's sometimes they're buttholes, but this guy wasn't. It was really nice.
No, I when I say I can't stand it, it's out of jealousy. Like I wish I grew up around so many people that were so multi-talented like that, and I was just like, oh
well,
man.
I grew up around those people, but they were also buttholes. So I just didn't like
some of them were.
But so I came in with him. There were so many other powerhouse musicians at that point that were all just like a lot of the freshman class got lead roles in the LBC musicals that were happening here. So I come in with I'm a percussionist. I come in, that's my primary instrument, and then my really good guy, Matt Cross, one of the best drummers I ever known. He can do stuff like a snarky puppy, like that kind of level of drumming. And I come in and I'm playing like simple rock and roll beats.
Like 4/4, like real straightforward.
Like, boom chick with some hi hat in it, and I'm just like I don't really know how I got in this place.
Yeah,
and so it was a long time. But one of the things that really stuck with me was that this guy Zach Fernback, he was doing a solo for the Christmas concert, and I just happened to run into him upstairs. He was kind of having a little bit of a breakdown, and I realized, oh, he's human.
Yeah,
he has feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's dealing with this too.
Yeah,
and that was a real eye opener for me. Is that people the people that you look up to or like think the highest of also have these issues.
And there's also be true to yourself, and usually there's in your art, and there's usually a place for that, an opening for that. Like being a 4/4 drummer, like there's nothing wrong with that. And there's people that are like you have your Dave Grohl, who's very 4/4, very straightforward, rock and roll drummer, one of the best out there. And then you have like your Neil Peart or people that are so technical and so over the top, odd time signatures and all over the place.
Multiple time
and
signatures,
it's just it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Is one better than the other? No. It's just different.
There's a place for both, and you can find those places. Because granted, popular music isn't going to be using multiple time signatures. That's more of experimental music than anything. It's cool and it's funky, but you're going to go much farther with just a simple 4/4 beat.
Well, do you want to be famous or do you want to be a musician?
Right, exactly. Yeah, right, exactly.
Do you want to play odd time signatures or be on the radio?
Right, exactly. And that's part of the whole thing. So it was really interesting. And I can't play I play piano and I play drums.
Yeah,
but
same.
I'm not proficient at well, I guess I kind of am, but I'm not classically trained. I'm not because I can look at a chord and I know all the theory and all that.
The funny thing is, we'll sit here and be like, oh, we're not proficient or we're not great at it because we're used to seeing people that are super
so much
proficient.
better, yeah.
But to somebody who can't play any instrument, if they saw you or I sit behind a piano, I'm not that good at it. Whatever, they'd be like, oh wow, you can play piano. And I'm like,
sort of, yeah. But
Sure.
yeah, I can't. I don't know the fingering for the scales or anything technical like that. So
Yeah.
it's more of just you give me a chord sheet, I can do that, and I can riff off that all
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
It's no problem. But coming into the space where there's people playing like Liszt or Rachmaninoff on
Oh.
the piano, and it's like, I'm gonna break my hand if I do that.
Yeah, yeah. Not even
Just,
gonna.
yeah, right. It's stuff that's almost impossible to play. That's literally pushing the limits of the human ability, and it's like, I don't know if I belong here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, in my mind, that's the stuff that those are the people and those are the things that I would compare myself to for like the imposter syndrome that we were talking about. If I can't do it like that well, I don't belong here.
If I can't do it like the most highest level, then
Yeah,
I don't belong here.
I don't belong here. Why am I wasting my time?
Right, and it's kind of funny that we compare ourselves to the highest level, but you got to always realize that someone that's always going to be better at what you do.
Yeah.
And there's we like to say the greatest of all time, but there's always someone better.
Yeah.
And there's always and it's always changing too.
Yeah. So again, like I think the best of all time, there isn't really a thing like that to me. It's it's the best of the moment and the best of a particular sound, and the best becomes a very broad term after you've been around for a while. Super subjective. Do your best at whatever you're gonna do.
There you go. Well, with that, we're kind of running out of time on the radio, so we're gonna take a little bit of a break.
Let's take a quick break, and
all right,
we'll come back.
I'm gonna play one of my songs. This is called "You Remain." This is a worship song I wrote 2 years ago, and I was dealing with a lot of stuff, especially during the pandemic. So I hope you enjoy that.
When I am weak, can no longer speak, you are there, right beside me. When all hope is lost, and I can't bear the cost, you are there, paying it for me. And when things turn to dust, and there's nothing to trust, you are there, honest to me. Oh, it's clear who you're meant to be. You are my strength. You are my faith. When all things fade away, you remain. When I've been crying, everything is dying, you are there, breathing life into me. And all I do is fear, and nothing seems clear. You are there, comforting me. Oh, it's clear who you're meant to be. Oh, you are my strength. You are my faith. When all things fade away, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout and tell them all that when every kingdom falls, yeah, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout and tell them all that when every kingdom falls, yeah, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout and tell them all that when every kingdom falls, yeah, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout
And that was my song, You Remain. Where can people find you at? Do you have any, like, I guess you can find you at Zoetropolis Cinema Stillhouse.
That is my primary gig nowadays. I'm at Zoetropolis for basically all live events going on. Unless I've got something else on, I have some competent, buddies that'll come in and cover for me. But for the most part, I'm there for every live event. So I'd say, check out Zoetropolis' website if you're interested in coming to an event, or if you see me there and want to say hi, you want to talk about the industry. I'd be more than happy to sit down with somebody when I have a few minutes and talk to it. If you're interested in getting into the industry, you can find me at andrew@zoetropolis.com is my email. And shoot me an email. I am looking for people that are interested in getting into the industry.
Oh, well, there you have it. And with that said, we're going to go back to the regular radio, and we will continue live on facebook.com/the story. If you'd like to hear more about that, we're going to get into some other topics. And with that said, goodbye to the radio. All right, cool. So, how cool are you about talking about your relationship?
My relationship?
Like your past relationship?
With? My ex?
Yeah.
I'm comfortable talking about that. I don't care.
Okay, so what was it like to, because, I mean, that, first off, I guess, how was the balance between the music and the relationship? Did you balance that well at all, or was that?
Oh, God, no.
So, okay.
No, it was terrible. It was terrible. There was a lot that I was going through on a personal level outside of the relationship that had nothing to do with the relationship that neither of us knew how to deal with. So, I was dealing with, severe depression and mental health issues, anxiety, depression, mood cycling, and all these things that I didn't even know that I was dealing with at the time. And to not healthily be dealing with those things. I was drinking, I was using substances, it just was not going well at all. When it was good, but when it was not, it was really not good. So
what was the breaking point for that relationship?
I think there's a multitude of things that was going on. If somebody had asked me right after what happened, and I'd just be like, it was infidelity and I left, would be my short answer. After spending some time looking back at the relationship and what had happened and what I had gone through and what she was going through, a lot of it was just mental health for both of us. We both played our parts. On my side, it was dealing with addiction and substance abuse that on a level that I didn't know how far deep I was in.
Oh, okay.
Just not being present.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, things went on. She went outside of the relationship, and that's all I could focus on at the time. So I would have told you that. Looking back at things, was I really present the last few years? No. I was in clubs from, I'd leave for work at 5 p.m. and get home at 7, 8 a.m. Loaded.
Right.
So, there was a massive part on my side of that of pushing, her and everyone away for that point, because I didn't know how to deal with the stuff that was going on with me.
Right. So, what do you? So that you think that was the main point? It wasn't maybe marrying the wrong person or marrying too quickly at all? No, not at all.
No, I think it was not being able to like grow and develop and like acknowledge that certain things were going on in the relationship together and dealing with them together. Things are going to change inevitably.
Nothing
The
is ever
truth-
the same.
The truth is fluid. It's not linear, is what I like to say. The truth and the facts are going to change on a daily basis. And unless you have a commitment to change and grow together, not just stay in love at the point when you fall in love, because it's not going to be like that 10
Right.
years. They say the 7-year syndrome or whatever it is. Like every 7 years, like everything changes. And it does. It does. And in hindsight, like neither of us were able to change with it. And I think that's what kind of like got me to where I was.
So, do you have any advice to like prepare yourself for those changes, or and like for any other couples that might deal with it or not realize that happens at all?
Communication. Communication is, in my experience, has been key in any relationship in life in general. And I at times have been such a terrible communicator, man. In the past, and then sometimes I'm not great at it now, but I try to be. And by terrible communicator, I don't mean like not verbalizing. I mean like maybe not verbalizing things the way that I actually like that are true, like the truth, or or articulating myself that well, or being scared to say something and not saying it because of that, or being scared of the repercussions. Communication, when I use that, it's a broad term. I mean, it's just honesty, being open, being willing to look at things that you don't want to look at. Like that's part of life.
It's part of growth.
Yeah, that's part of growth. And if you're not ready to do those sort of things on your own, like with yourself, like just be honest with yourself, be willing to look at the things about yourself that you may not like or you may not be proud of, and have a drive to change those things and work on those things, then maybe you're not ready for a relationship, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. That's totally the truth. If you're not happy with yourself, I don't think you could be happy with somebody else, because you're at that point you're having them fill your holes for you.
Yeah, and it's something like, and it's not even like you gotta be completely like fulfilled, and,
Right?
like,
No,
on top of the world.
No way. It's
But
gonna be perfect.
you gotta. I personally like have to have a willing to look at that stuff at least and acknowledge that it's there, and 'cause I still feel that way sometimes. And I still struggle with all these things, like almost on a daily basis. They're things that I have to acknowledge about myself in life. If I want to move forward, I have to acknowledge like this is part of me. This is part of who I was. I know I suffer from depression, anxiety, and substance problems. And like, what am I going to do to not go down that again actively on a daily basis? And, it took me a long time to kind of figure that stuff. Not that I have it figured out, but
You have a hand on it, at least.
to have a handle on it.
Yeah. It's a lot of people are afraid of accepting their issues, and there's been a push, at least culturally, of that to accept your issues, or not to like, and rather embrace your issues.
Well, there's also been a lot of open discussion. I'd say the table's been open the discussion has been much more open when it comes to mental health. When it comes to substance abuse, we got the opioid epidemic going on. Like nobody talked about that kind of stuff. Well, not nobody, but not as prevalent.
It wasn't prominent whatsoever.
Not at all. And about being like, things have become normalizing. Things have become normalized, like talking about that stuff. Like we can appreciate it more now that celebrities have talked about it. Families. I don't know a family or a person that hasn't been touched by either mental health or addiction. Like if you don't personally struggle from it, somebody who's got somebody in the family. Almost everybody's got somebody in the family that has.
Everybody has their addiction that they don't realize. It's like
Oh, it manifests.
coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether it be like, and there are healthy addictions. But there's also a lot of unhealthy addictions.
Well, I don't know if I'd say healthy. I think there's things that do less damage
That's fair.
externally to other people. Somebody with, for let's say, a food addiction, like they're not running around hurting other people like a drug addict would to get, their food. A drug addict will do it in a much different way that ends up hurting everybody around them,
Right,
much quicker. Is that at the end of the day, what that food addict and what that drug addict are suffering from, that mental condition, is the same.
Right. There's when I was thinking about like addiction to healthy things, I was like exercise. I know some people who
But
just
even that
love
can
exercise.
go too far.
I was thinking about that.
So
yeah.
addiction, I think, is a term that gets used real loosely, and I don't think a lot of people are really grasping what we're talking about when we talk about addiction, whether it be to exercise, food, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Oh, that's not working out for me. Maybe you should try something different or just stop. No kidding. I know what I'm doing isn't healthy. I know it's not working out for me. I've either eaten so much that I'm, 400 pounds or whatever, or I've, burned all my bridges through drugs and alcohol, or I've exercised myself down to nothing. I can't stop. That's the whole
point. Yeah, that's
point.
fair.
Have you ever thought about trying? Yes, I did think about. Yeah, I think about it every day. But I can't.
Right. So it's all about rewiring your brain and that is something that is so hard to do because it's nothing logical. It's all at that point it's kind of abstract to like rewire your brain because you don't realize you're thinking about it.
Well, it becomes an acknowledgement for me anyway. I'll speak to my experience with that. I spent a long time trying to get out of the thought processes I was in, the alcoholism, the drug use, and all that stuff. It was not an easy path for me to get clean and to change my life. And even being armed with like all the knowledge of what I needed to do, like actually doing it
is the hard part.
Oh man. And like you said, it is like kind of a rewire and like starting to think of things differently. So essentially, as it was kind of like explained to me, like, what are we doing like when we're in that addictive state of mind? Like I'm turning this food or whatever substance or thing into like my higher power, into like something that absolutely runs and rules my life. So where can I find something healthier to be that, higher power, so to say, or God, or
right,
however you want to put it. And so, finding a replacement for that, and not putting dependency in all things human,
right,
understand that there is something, greater,
bigger than you,
bigger than me, and to want to become a part of that.
Yeah.
And have a conscious contact with that versus only having contact with.
So what was that for you?
For me, it's hard to say. Like, I just kind of like, I've never been a huge person of like religion or faith. So it was hard for me. For a lot of people that, are trying to recover from a certain condition and they have like faith behind them and they've been a part of a church or whatever for a long time, it's maybe a little bit easier for them sometimes to say, okay, this isn't working for me. I'm going to put my dependency in God and stuff. And I had a hard time like saying the word God for a long time when I was trying to recover and get out of this thing. So, for me, it just became like more of like a power of the universe, like understanding that, humanity was not the end all be all of everything, that there were greater forces at work. And I learned also that for me, I didn't need to deify it. I would be okay with even the most basic acknowledgement of that to get started.
Okay, fair enough.
As a beginner baby step.
Right, yeah.
But it doesn't feel like a beginner baby step for someone.
No, it doesn't, because you have to realize that subconsciously you're taking this drug and you're saying, oh, I can only exist with this drug.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Yeah.
That's what it feels
Yeah.
like, and especially when you go through withdrawal, it heightens that to the nth degree.
Well, yeah, you go into your fight or flight, like, I'm going to die if I don't get this.
Right, exactly, and it's more of I need to have this in order to live, in order to keep living, in order to keep existing. There's no life without it.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets, and that can be a substance, that can be people,
Yep.
that can be ego, that can be so many different things. In some extents, it can be God. Well, very literally, it can be God.
Yes,
For a lot
absolutely.
of people, it is God.
Yeah, and I know people that have gone down that wormhole too, like ended up in cult type situations,
yeah.
and like extraordinarily unhealthy, almost more unhealthy. Well, I don't know if that's not fair to say. Just as unhealthy as a drug addiction.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy how the human brain will take something and completely run with it to its total extreme without realizing.
So as we've come to understand it, we're talking about a brain disorder, and that's what like modern day medicine, or however you want to put it, has come to understand addiction, and it's a brain disorder.
So some of the ways that I've dealt with my own issues is you have to realize what your triggers are. You have to realize what you're thinking before you do it, what you're thinking after you do it, and then slowly, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, we go back to the whole thing of like describing addiction. Yeah, sometimes I would even know what I was doing was wrong, and know what I was doing was bad, knew the repercussions, but I couldn't help but do it. So, yeah, man, it's a bear.
Yeah, there's one of the things that I've read that was helpful was that you know your triggers, but as soon as you catch yourself, you just immediately do something else.
Yeah.
You set your mind to, okay, I'm gonna go for a run for at least like 5 minutes, or I'm gonna read this book and get completely distract myself. And granted, it might be just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
But it's rewiring your brain to like, okay, now this is a trigger for running, or now this is a trigger for blah blah blah, and it's breaking down the old habits and putting them into newer habits that are more reasonable or more healthy.
I realized I understand that train of thought and that train of thinking, and I think that works for some people.
Yes, it works for some people.
That did not work for me.
So what worked for you?
For me, it had to be like I went through a process in which I had to kind of like I reinvented like myself, so to say, and I had to take a look at like all my morals and all my driving forces behind my actions throughout my life, and kind of like inventory them, get them in front of me, and like identify the patterns, and kind of say to myself, these are the patterns or thought processes which have gotten me to where I am, right? It's not working, obviously. It's not working. And if you've gotten to the point where you need to write all this stuff down and look at it, clearly something's like, if you need to put that much effort into it. But anyway, so I got everything down, and I sat down with another guy, and we talked about it for a minute, and it was just kind of like, okay, like I see all these thought processes that aren't getting me anywhere, and that I keep falling into and keep resulting in bad behavior, and making the decision to like do something about it, like change it, and like rewire my thinking from top to bottom, and kind of let go of that old personality, and be willing and open the door to a new one. And it's not an easy task.
No, it's not an easy task. There was a point in my life where I would I always like to tell stories. So I would always exaggerate things or say things that just weren't true in order, and it's gotten to the point where at some points I can't remember what my actual life is.
Yeah.
So I had to go through that, and I kind of right now I'm kind of dealing with the consequences of that, and having to I do know the right timeline. I know my right timeline, but it was getting to the point where it was like, was it? but it's and then you have to rework those relationships because now there's these people that they think that I've done all these crazy things or they've done, and some of them are true, but it's a matter of saying, hey, and then that's super humbling to have to do that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
hey, I lied to you, and that was wrong.
That's
of me. Yeah.
part of what I did too. Acknowledging the patterns in my life, and I think this is something that's universally talked about actually a lot in like making amends and like changing things in order to move forward, like kind of putting the past at ease, so to say, and not behind me. Entirely, because I think it's important that I remember what that was like, but making things right to the best of my ability,
and then moving on, and
Yeah.
there's something to be said about like relapsing because it's gonna happen.
Oh God, yeah, man. Like the journey first started for me of like serious sobriety back in 2008 or so, like that, and
What
like
a time to.
yeah, right. It's it's been a struggle. Like relapse is absolutely part of my story.
And you gotta remember that it's gonna be part of it no matter what. There's no perfect end to something like that. It's always gonna be a part of you. You're always gonna have your triggers, and it won't speak as loud, but it'll be there. It'll always be in the back burner of your head, and you just gotta suppress and suppress and suppress.
Well, for me, interestingly enough, like that's not there anymore. Really.
Oh, really?
Like I don't walk around with certain things on the forefront of my mind anymore at all. Like I feel free from
good.
it. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, yeah. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
But for me, it's still always in the back of my head. Like, for example, somebody will say something, and then I have that story that's a lie, and I'll be like, oh, by the way, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then it's like a constant struggle to not only keep my mouth shut, but also just to like relate in a different way.
Yeah. In a healthy way.
In a healthy way that's not necessarily lying. Well, that is not lying, and that is helpful to the conversation at least.
Yeah.
It's and you can't be discouraged when you relapse.
No, and it's not part of everybody's story, but it's a part of a lot of people's story. Is driving certain circumstances, situations come up, and it happens.
Things happen.
I think of we talk about that. Like I think of Philip Seymour Hoffman. 22 years sober, relapsed, and like OD'd.
Oh wow.
Yeah. People didn't even know he like had a problem. And yeah. And next thing you know, after 20 something years of sobriety, we lost him.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the line of getting out of it, relapsing. Like, so say you go a day without it, and then you relapse, but then you go 2 days, 3 days without it, and then you it's you have to realize that it is a journey. If you have to be in it for the long haul, you can't be in it for the short term, because if you do that, you're just gonna get hit with withdrawal after withdrawal after withdrawal, and
it varies. A blanket statement for me, like that is kind of it's super subjective. At first, it's for the short term. Like depending on what you're dealing with too.
Right. Yes.
If you're dealing with somebody who's out, who's dealing with substance, like hard substance, that one time could be the last time. So, the short term can be very, very, very important for them, that they get some sort of separation from whatever's going on. But at the end of the day, like we are all looking for a long-term solution.
Yeah, that's part of this. What I was saying is that you don't want to be discouraged if you're relapsing after a day or so.
No.
You can set your goal to be a day without it, or 2 days without it, or a week without it.
Sometimes it needs to be 5 minutes.
Sometimes, yes, exactly. And but what I was saying is that you need to be in it for the long haul. You have to realize that it's a long process. And
when I first decided I wanted to try to get sober, it was interesting. First, I thought, if I could only do this on the weekends, like I'll be fine. Then I realized after a while, okay, just doing it on the weekends isn't going to work either. And I'll do that for a few months, and then next thing I know, it's every day again, and
Right.
whatnot. And so it's kind of like a pivotal point of where this isn't going to work
At
in
all.
my life,
Yeah.
at all, which is a whole nother like
Beast. Yeah, like,
oh,
oh,
no,
no.
oh
Oh,
jeez,
no.
like this really doesn't work.
All right. Well, we've talked about that. What is there anything else you have in mind to talk about?
um Not in particular, man. I think we've covered a pretty broad range of topics. Like I'm a pretty open book. Like if you got questions, like fire away.
I'm just trying to think about questions that haven't been explained already, cause oh, what are you looking forward to most now?
Most now, man, I just look forward to. I couldn't be happier about landing at Zoetropolis, and I'm really excited to see where we progress there as a live venue, like as a music venue, and just as a part of the art community here in Lancaster.
How has the art community in Lancaster changed over?
Oh my God. Geez, I left Lancaster in early 90s, right? I came back in like the mid 90s for a minute and then went up to New York City for a long time, came back. Like there was barely an art community here when I left. And it was while I was away, like the First Friday thing started and all kinds of great programs that the city put into action. And like I came back and like just this stuff was there, like Gallery Row and like good venues. I mean, it went from non-existent to being like super prevalent, like to Lancaster really being like a destination and encouraging of arts, which blew me away. Made me want to be part of the community.
Right. It was wild. Apparently recently it's been more exploding more than ever in like the 2010s at least.
Yeah.
Because before I only came here around 2016, 2015. Oh, actually no, that's incorrect. 2017 is when I went to Lancaster Bible College. So that's when I would have been around here. But apparently before that it was kind of like dying in some aspects.
Yeah, I Lancaster always did have a bit of art. We had the Chameleon Club for 40 years, the Village, some major acts on the beginner band circuit, so to say. Tremendous talent has come through Lancaster for a long time. But in terms of like local music and art scene, just the development we've seen in the past decade and the support from the city has been incredible. It made me feel like when I moved back down here in like I was either 2010 or 2011, I was like, I can get down with this. Like I see that it's happening, that things are headed in the right direction. So to be part of that and to be bringing in acts that probably wouldn't come to Lancaster if they weren't playing at Zoetropolis means a lot to me. And to be bringing in some diversity, I'm really happy about.
So what was it like for you when 2020 came and everything shut down? Was that like heart stopping to you?
Yeah, it was. Man, everything just kind of stopped, as we're all well aware, and it was just like, oh my goodness, like what am I gonna do? And my heart dropped for a minute, and I sat at home for about 2 weeks. And luckily, like I have that mechanical inclination, and I went down that wormhole for a while, and that was like my therapy. I'd just go over to my shop and work on motorcycles and tinker around with toys, and I was lucky to be able to have that outlet. And the pause and like the break from everything was kind of like a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways for me, because when we came back is when I started at Zoetropolis on more of a regular, like close to full-time basis.
So it was rather nice for you.
It had its ups and downs, just like for everybody. But now that we're coming back, and now that I've gotten through that whole chunk of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I came out in a position where I want to be. Like, I'm really happy
That's good.
now.
It seems like it, for sure.
Yeah, like being there, and all my friends say that too. Like, man, you're happier than I've ever seen you. I was like, well, man, I love what I do. I work with phenomenal people, like bringing art to what I think is a fantastic community. Like, I love Lancaster.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a lot of great things going on. Some not so great, but the majority.
For the most part, it's going pretty well. I feel,
Yeah.
from what I've seen just in this past year alone.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was here in high school, we didn't come downtown, period.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we did if we wanted to get weed. We'd come downtown. And even then, we were scared.
Right.
Like, we didn't want to be downtown. It seemed like there was nothing going on that was attractive, or
Was the Central Market there? That
it
point?
was,
It
yeah.
Was? Okay.
And this was my experience as a kid.
Right.
I was in East Petersburg, but we come down here, and to me, it was just scary. Like, I didn't want to be down here. I was a country boy from Wisconsin that moved to East Pete, and even East Pete felt urban to me.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, so coming downtown, it was just scary to me. I didn't see art. Downtown was pretty run down back then. There just wasn't much destination-wise. Lancaster's always been kind of like a tourist area because of the Amish stuff and
the
Central Market.
Scenery.
But in terms of like a local scene and like a local art scene and music, man, it's night and day difference.
That's good.
Yeah. And again, just to be part of that and to be able to support that and make a living is like, I couldn't be happier. I don't make a ton of money. I make enough to get by, but my life is very rich.
That's good. It's not always about what like what you have and all that jazz. It's more about it's what you do and the people and the connections you make.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're getting in this industry to make money, you're in the wrong industry.
Right. Yeah.
For the most part.
Yes, that is correct. And one of the biggest changes that I've kind of seen is that I don't think that this podcast could have existed like 3 or 4 years ago.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, there wouldn't have been that many. Besides, like, you would have the Servant Stages and the Sight and Sounds and all the theaters. The theaters were kind of around at that point. But
we didn't have the music community or the art community that we do now.
Right.
For sure.
For sure.
And it is growing exponentially every year. Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always
Absolutely.
new people coming out to like Talis 360.
Well, there's a multitude of different levels now. There's different scenes. You got the Tellus crowd, which is like a little more young and reckless crew or whatever, and they bring through some
musicians,
some bigger musicians and stuff. Zoetropolis is kind of like a different scene from that. Like, we're a little more mature audience,
professional-ish,
professional musician, outstanding. Not that the other venues don't bring outstanding musicians. Ours are more like
classical.
More musicians.
Yeah.
Music, true music nerd stuff.
Yeah.
And we have a very folky sound to a lot of our musicians, and we diversify that as well. But it's just a different scene. And then we have Phantom Power, which is like a different scene.
A whole different scene.
And we have a bunch of small communities within our music community that did not exist.
Just coming into the scene, I already know like at least five different circles of musicians. At least five. There's the Tellus crowd with like Bjorn, Robin, Chambers, and all that. Then there's like the Nathan Arndt group where they have their like nice little folky kind of group. There's Liam Galliano and his like amazing bass playing soul liners group. It's probably names that you might not have heard of.
Yeah, I just worked with Liam, as a matter of fact.
Did you?
The Soul Miners just played at Zoetropolis.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then there's like the whole there's a prog rock section, and then with Danny Zinger, I think. Heard of them at all?
I don't know.
Henry Dvorak is a part of that.
I hate to say it, like, I'm really bad with names because I meet so many people.
There's also so many. Yeah, there's also so many people in here. But then you have your theater circles, and then you have your church circles, because there's some amazing church musicians as well.
It's great to see.
Yeah, it's
great
really
to see.
cool, and it's. But what I've realized, it's all segregated, so it's part of bringing it all together
It is to a point. I mean,
to a certain point.
there are circles, and I like what Matt's doing in terms of our bookings, in terms of like kind of shaking that up a little bit. Like we do we bring in all kinds of different stuff, which is great. So yeah, it's just happy to see the communities, period. And the more we can collaborate together as, these separate communities within our music community, I think the better it is for everybody. That's why we had spoken before, the radio segment about music for everyone and some other stuff that's going on in the city. Man, if you have the opportunity to get involved in one of those programs, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely do it. Music for everyone is one of the ones that comes to the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff I'm gonna have to check out, because I'm relatively new to this whole scene. Being only, I think I came in last August, where I started like doing gig musicians and started learning and knowing people. So there's so much more that I've just not ever heard of.
Yeah,
and that's something that's rare.
So what music for? I'll tell you a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I volunteered with Music for Everyone a couple years ago, like pre-pandemic, and what they've done is they've financed the music programs in all the public schools in Lancaster County.
Oh wow!
Through like benefit concerts and like all types of various methods. And
are those isn't that the group that like puts out the pianos?
I was just gonna say that they're behind Keys for the City, which I believe is in their. Well, man, I remember celebrating 10 years with them.
They're about to put them back out again.
They just put them back out. Well, I live right around the corner from the library downtown, and the one at the library was out the other day. I'm not sure if they're all out yet, but it's happening. I don't know if that's a tricky thing, like post-pandemic, with people putting their hands on it. I don't know.
It's kind of there's like a plus and minus to that, because like some of the pianos you'll find they're absolutely trashed and like way out of tune and all that jazz. But I mean it's a cool thing, because you'll find literally there will be hundreds of pianos around the city, or like at least 50 at least.
I have no idea how many. A lot.
There's a lot of pianos.
Yeah.
You'll walk around, like there's one at Orange Street Park Garage.
Yeah, there's one at the parking garage.
There's one in the center city. There's one right outside of Tellus that's usually there. That's
the one that gets trashed.
Yeah, that's the one that usually gets trashed. There's one by the Wells Fargo. There's
Musser Park's got one.
They're literally everywhere. I'm pretty sure you can't walk a mile in Lancaster City without finding one.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful. Again, years ago that would not have existed,
and it's unique to the city. I don't think there's any other city that really does that.
I believe Lancaster was one of the first doing something like on that scale.
Yeah, for sure. So what else is that? Pretty much the extent of what they do, or
from my knowledge is a bit limited. I know they at one point were offering like summer programs for kids, and like they had a summer camp going on that I believe was at little to no cost to certain families, like families in need. All kinds of things. Matt, again from Zoetropolis, is on the board of that as well.
I'll have to grab him.
Yeah, I'll talk to Matt.
All right. Well, so we're kind of ending off. At least it sounds like. So I'm gonna ask you some of the key questions that I like to ask people.
Yeah.
So, what if you could go back in time and tell little Andrew something that you know now? What would it be?
Oh, geez. Probably.
That can be related to anything.
Man, just to be true to myself, like be honest with myself.
Was there a time that you weren't on? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
Probably a
long time. Yeah, it seems like a long time. Follow my gut more.
All right. Well, so we've talked about like so you had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. Was there ever a time where you had like the opposite of that, which I don't know but you
Like
had
delusions
like the
of grandeur?
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. There's times where like I'd play for a couple thousand people, and I should be on tour. I should be doing this, and like, yeah, I've gone all over the spectrum of that. And
So what keeps you grounded during those times, or what has brought you down from those times?
I think well, sobriety's helped a lot with that. Living like in reality about things, and I don't know. I just got to the point where I just found it easier to be like super humble about things and like just kind of take things as they come and like not to exaggerate, not to get too excited. Like just to, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that. I just kind of like cleared up. Like I guess when I kind of went for that transformation that I needed to clean up a bit, everything just kind of like started coming in and in a different light, and I had a different viewpoint on things, and I was just like okay with things, whether they were really good or really bad. Like
Just like going into flow almost.
yeah, just like
Yeah.
a level of like acceptance. It's like I think they call it radical acceptance,
Oh yeah.
which is no matter what happens, it's okay.
Oh yeah. Gotcha.
It's so radical. It's okay that things are terrible right now,
Right.
because they're gonna get better.
Yes.
It's okay if things are good now.
Yeah. One of the more famous quotes that I always like: "This too shall pass,"
Yeah.
which can mean good things and bad things.
Oh yeah.
And it's always true. Everything is gonna go away at some point, whether it be happiness, sadness, or whatever. Because there is no life comes in cycles.
Yeah,
It-
it's constant roller coaster, waxes and wanes, peaks, valleys. Like, yeah. If I get too comfortable anywhere, I know it's a problem.
Right. Yes. So how can we encourage each other, in regards to like growth? How do we properly critique each other? Is there you have any thoughts on that?
Just be a support. I just try to be as supportive as I can, no matter what. And if you ask me a question, you're going to get the honest answer. And my friends know that. They know if they ask me something, like be ready
Mm-hmm.
for the answer that you're going to get. And if you don't want an honest answer, ask somebody else. I just think be loving and supportive as we can of each other as humans, as artists, and through this human experience, that we're all going through.
So what is the worst thing that has ever happened to you on a show? Like,
Oh God. I mean, I've showed up so sick that I couldn't perform, like even like mix at a council. Like I was just like so incredibly ill from alcohol. Yeah.
from
Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah.
Gotcha.
That like so incredibly like hungover that I literally like was in the bathroom like sick the entire gig. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like I can't believe I even made it there. That was like a horrible, like painful personal experience. But like in terms of a show, like man, I've had like gear catch on fire. I've had
Really?
all kinds of crazy stuff happen. Like I don't know, once you're out there for a little bit, it's hard to say of anything worse. Like it's all been comical at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, like, you're catching on fire. How else do you respond to that? But like laugh.
Put it
and
out,
something,
yeah.
like-
Laugh and put it out, yeah.
Right,
Make sure nobody
yeah.
gets hurt.
Right. That's wild.
That doesn't happen so much now anymore, but that's the
good.
old gear.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I've seen one of the synths, like the old synths with all the wires in them,
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's like
You know, the amps
hazard.
used to be like hot, and like the amps used to weigh like 75, 100 pounds a piece, and like it was just different technology.
Well, with all that said, this has been a wonderful time.
Yeah, it's been fun.
You can find him as Zoetropolis. When is their next show happening?
This I want to say Friday we have Maya DeVitri.
That's right. That's one of the ones I wanted to go to.
Yeah, it's Maya DeVitri with of the Stray Birds with Alexa Rose, and that's actually Thursday at 7 at Zoetropolis.
All right. Well,
So-
if you want to catch that there's still there's still tickets available.
Yep, there's still tickets at Zoetropolis.com. Yep.
It's $15. Was it?
I don't know off the top of my head. That's not my department.
I have the weirdest capability to remember things. I'm pretty sure you said it was like $15 or
Something like that.
One of the it's very affordable.
We just had the other Dimitri as well.
Yeah.
There's the sisters, yeah. So.
Well, with all that said, this has been Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast. Be sure to like and follow us here or on Spotify. You can just search up the story, Corey Rosen. That's all you got to do. And with that said, everybody have a good day. Bye.